Here come the Lakers in a hurry. Final half minute of the first half, and Kyle Kuzma has come alive. Kyle Kuzma has the last 8 for the Lakers.
Okay, so Lakers just beat Charlotte. Alex Caruso was the player of the game, and I'll get into that game specifically. But first, I want to talk about some big picture things for the Lakers. Since LeBron James has gone out with injury, they're 6-7. So that's pretty fucking good. I mean, being 500 pretty much without the best player in the world, without AD, I mean, that is insanely impressive. Hats off, gotta tip your hat to Frank Vogel. I was hard on him for a bit offensively, but defensively, this dude is a genius. It's been a fucking masterclass. The Lakers are playing so hard right now, and they went 4-3 on this recent 7-game road trip, which is crazy. And the win of the year was probably the win against the Nets on Saturday night. That was a crazy win. That gave this team a lot of confidence. Going 500 in this stretch without Bron, I don't think people realize how big that is. Like, if the Lakers didn't do that, they were in danger of falling out of the playoff race. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. And look, I know that there's still the play-in and stuff, but in my mind, falling to the play-in is it's a failure. It's a failure of a season if you're in the play-in game. I know that you'll have Bron and AD at that point, but when you're in the play-in game, anything can happen in one game. If you're the 7th seed, you get to play 2 games, but still, all it takes is 2 games of poor shooting and you're fucking out. So for all intents and purposes, if you're not a top 6 seed, to me, you're out of the playoff race, even though you're technically not. You could still obviously win your play-in games and then be fine. But that to me is a failure of the season if they had fallen out of the 6th seed. You just don't want to be putting yourself in that position when you're the defending champs. And fortunately, going 6-7 in this stretch without Bron, that's kept the Lakers in the 5th spot in the West. So if we look at the Western Conference standings right now, they trail the Nuggets by 1 game for the 4th seed. Now, the Nuggets just had a pretty terrible injury for Jamal Murray, obviously. Wishes go out to him. Hopefully he recovers very quickly. It just sucks, man. It just sucks. He's an incredible player. But, I still think the Nuggets will hold around that spot because Jokic is just that fucking good. And I didn't really think the Aaron Gordon trade was that big of a deal for them, to be honest. Like, I don't think Aaron Gordon is that good. I think it's just more so Jokic being insanely good. So I think the Nuggets will hang around that spot. Maybe they drop a little bit. It's tough to be motivated when you know your second best player is hurt. But for the Lakers right now, they got the Trailblazers and the Mavs chasing them, right? So you want to stay the fuck out of the 7th spot. You want to stay 6 or above. So any win you're getting right now is huge. That's why tonight's win was big. That's why going 4-3 on this road trip was big. If you look at the schedule coming up for the Lakers have a tough-ass schedule coming up. So they got the Celtics, Jazz, Mavs, Jazz, Mavs. So that's a pretty tough 5-game stretch. The Mavs are probably the weakest team in that stretch, but you're playing against Luka Doncic. The Mavs are going to have the best player on the court during both of those games. So it's always tough when you're playing a team and they have the best player on the court. So I don't know what the next 5 games are going to hold. I don't see the Lakers beating the Jazz at all in either of those 2 games, but I could be wrong. Celtics will be a tough one. The Celtics have way more talent, but the Celtics have been fucked up all season, so we're going to see what happens. And the Mavs are pushing hard right now. They don't want to play right now. I think they're going to have to play Golden State. They don't want to play Golden State in a fucking play-in, so the Mavs are trying to advance up the seeding. Mark Cuban just came out. He said today, he's like, the play-in games are bullshit. I don't like the play-in games either. So I actually agree with Cuban, but, the Mavs are going to be gunning hard. So knowing all those things right now, we're at a point in the season where these wins fucking matter. These wins matter. They matter. And you're just trying to stack as many wins as you can, build yourself a cushion until Bron and AD come back so they don't feel pressure. And that's what the Lakers have done right now. 6-7, you couldn't ask for more. All right, so let's get into some specific players. I'm not going to cover every single player, but I just want to cover some of the main guys and just some of the things that I'm seeing from them. Dennis Schroeder, first and foremost. He obviously has a lot of flaws as a player. That's why he's he got traded. That's why he's not a guy who's making $30 million a year, or at least not yet. We know what he does at this point. He's extremely turnover prone. He's not a good decision maker. But on the flip side, offensively, he can get to the rim on switches, and that's basically what he did against the Nets. He killed the Nets getting to the rim on switches. His defense is all NBA first team level. And he's a fighter. He's a fucking dog. So you just always know that he's gonna come out and he's gonna fight his ass off. Now, a lot of fans are bitching and moaning about him getting paid this offseason. I'm one of those fans, but I'm still in the camp of you gotta pay him and you gotta keep him because you can't let him walk for nothing. The Lakers can't. They're hard capped, so they can't get anything in return. So you gotta keep him. He'll be great once LeBron comes back and takes a lot of that initiating pressure off of Dennis, because Dennis isn't a good decision maker. He's a better secondary guy, attacking a defense that isn't loading up on him. So I think overall on this stretch, like, he's actually played pretty well. Like, he's had some really frustrating games where he's just throwing the ball away. And I'm not going to excuse him for a lot of these turnovers, because it's not like these turnovers are turnovers that are forced. A lot of them are just really bad decisions where you're like, man, why did you do that? Like, you just didn't have to do that. I don't care if you're, taking on all of the ball handling duties. Like, that's just a basic decision that you know not to make. Like, they teach you in high school not to make that. Like, he'll drive in 1-on-4, 1-on-3. It's like, what are you doing, man? And he was turning the ball over a lot even when Bron was here. So that is a big issue with him. But overall, like, I think he's played well during this stretch. He's not used to doing this type of shit. He's not used to carrying this type of load. And it's not like the Lakers have a ton of shooting and spacing around him. So I think he's actually been solid in this stretch. But the turnovers, man, they are so bad. They are so bad. But still, I mean, it's what I expect from him at this point. He's a flawed player, but a lot of players are flawed, Like, the only not flawed players in the league are pretty much superstars. So that's pretty much it on Dennis. I still think he's been solid. And I'm glad to have him on the team, and I'm glad to have him as a starting point guard. Next up, Alex Caruso. I mean, tonight he was the player of the game against Charlotte. Caruso was pretty terrible at the beginning of this stretch because Vogel was putting him in situations where he was running pick and roll. And we know at this point that Caruso is not a pick and roll type of player. Like, maybe he could pick and roll with Bron, but that's totally different. Caruso, like, skill-wise, he's not the most skilled ball handler. He's not the best finisher. He's really a hustle defense, like, can hit wide open threes type of guy, and he's just more smart, right? He's more of a smart hustle role player. He's a super role player. That's what he is. So when you put him in the pick and roll and have him initiate, it's going to look ugly. So I think what Frank has done in the last few games, and credit Frank for making some adjustments, they haven't asked Caruso to run straight pick and roll as much. It's more so been Schroeder and THT, and instead, Caruso now, it's more about him, like, making decisions when the defense is already moving. So maybe it's like swing, get the defense moving. Now the ball gets to Alex. He can attack a defense that's off balance. Now he can make, a smart kick out pass, sometimes a smart dump off. Sometimes he just takes the easy shot. Like, it's easier for him when he's not having to run pick and roll. Because you guys got to understand, like, running pick and roll is reserved for the most gifted ball handlers in the league. That shit is difficult because defenders are on your back, and then you got the big man coming up to try to strip down and dig down at the ball. Like, that shit is really difficult, and you got to make decisions in traffic. So it's not what his strengths are. But I think recently Vogel's been coaching a lot more to his strengths. He's been shooting the three ball well. I actually thought he was going to regress a lot more because his free throw shooting is a little bit shaky. But overall, he's been hitting the three ball when he's open. He's been making some big threes. They're not always pretty. They touch a lot of rim before they drop, but they still drop. And then defensively, I think he's moving his feet a lot better than he was earlier in the season. Early on in the season, man, he didn't have his legs under him. He was getting burned a lot. Now he's playing a lot better defense. So pretty happy with Caruso. He's starting to get his win back. KCP, super interesting. So if you guys have been watching the Lakers, you notice that since Ben McLemore was signed to the team, KCP looks like he's got a pep in his step. And that shouldn't be surprising because Ben McLemore is nowhere near the player that KCP is. KCP can play defense and Ben McLemore can't. But Ben McLemore is basically KCP insurance. And I borrowed that from Laker Film Room. And I really agree with this point, which is if KCP is playing like shit, and that for KCP doesn't mean he's missing his shots. For me, when KCP's playing like shit, it's not that he's missing his shots. It's that he's not shooting wide open threes. Like, he'll get shots and he passes them up. He passes them up to, like, fucking throw the ball away or travel on the way to the rim because he's in his own head about missing shots. And then defensively, he doesn't have that same pep. So it's not about him making shots. It's about how he's playing the game and whether he's taking those shots. When the Lakers signed Ben McLemore, KCP understood what that was about. That's basically saying, hey, we need more shooting on this team. And if you're not going to provide that shit, then you're going to see your minutes cut, and we got a guard right here that can step up and do it. And Ben McLemore is not as good as KCP, but if KCP isn't shooting the three, then you're going to get your minutes cut. So I think that's lit a fire under KCP's ass, and now all of a sudden, in the last 3 games, he's been a totally different player, man. Totally different player since the Lakers signed McLemore. He's sprinting up and down the court. Like, the first game I think McLemore played was against Miami Heat last week, and KCP had a fantastic game. He had a fantastic game against the Miami Heat. Why is that? Well, he knows, right? Like, when someone brings in someone else to replace you, you get fired up. So KCP's been playing much better. He's defending much better. He's zipping all around the court. He's getting into loose balls. He's shooting with confidence. He's even finishing at the rim. Like, now we're seeing KCP with a little bit of competition, and I think it's been good for him, man. And so hopefully he keeps this going, because when KCP is going, this team can win games. Like, if KCP's in a slump, this team's not winning a single fucking game. But if KCP is playing well, it really adds a different dimension to this team, man. You need your shooting guard. You need your starting shooting guard to play like one. And he's been doing that. Okay, THT. I'm not going to cover West, but I think West has played a lot better. So that's all I'm going to say about West. I just don't want to make this video super long. But THT, he's been playing a lot better. And he was up and down at the beginning of the season. Defensively, he was a mess. He was good on ball, but off the ball, he was just missing rotations left and right. But right now, defensively, if you watch him closely, he's not missing any rotations anymore. He's still prone to making some dumb mistakes, but he's making all of his rotations now, and that's why he's getting minutes, and he's getting way more steals, way more picks. Like, defensively, I'm just not concerned about him anymore. I felt like back in January, I was like, oh shit, he's always prone to like blow a rotation or something like that. And so he's 20 years old. Obviously, he's figured that part of the game out. Offensively, he's a lot better. Like, I think he's averaging like close to double digits in this stretch. He's passing the ball well. He had 11 assists against the Nets, which is a career high. He's shooting the 3-ball more frequently, but he's still not shooting it well. He's still a brick from 3, but his free throw percentage is good. So this guy's I think he's gonna be a solid shooter down the line, but he needs to spend this summer locking himself into in a gym, and it just needs to be like, shoot the 3-ball and work on your handles. My theory, with absolutely no evidence of this at all, is I believe that right now when he's shooting the basketball, it looks like he's touching it with his palm. So for those of you who play ball, if you have smaller hands, like if you're a 6-foot guy like me, and you don't have these gargantuan hands, like I can palm the ball, but like my hands are just big enough to palm the basketball. So when your hands are that size, you can touch palm on your basketball. But when your hands are the size of THT's, like, you shouldn't be touching the palm. You should be touching your finger pads, because his hands are like this fucking long. It looks to me like some of the ways that he's shooting a 3-ball, it looks like he's shooting it off his palm, because the ball is just going all over the place, and it's like he's missing so badly sometimes that he's banking in threes. That to me tells me he has no control over the ball when he's shooting the deep ball, and it's probably all palm. But look, I'm speculating. What the fuck do I know? Anyways, he is a summer away of lab work from being like a 20-point per game scorer, because they cannot keep him out of the paint, and he's got great handles. He's initiating the offense way more. He's taking a lot of pressure off of Dennis. They're putting him in the pick and roll. He's way smarter in terms of like, I get the ball, I'm not just gonna have to attack and just put my head down and not pass the fucking basketball. Now, when he gets the basketball and he attacks the rim, he's way more patient. If it's not there, he kicks it out, he gets it back. You know what I mean? So as a result, he's getting way more assists. He's just he's just controlling the game way more. He just looks like he's settled down, which is huge for him. Like, the way they're letting him play right now, it's gonna pay major dividends down the line. Like, he is growing at an insane rate right now, because he's still not allowed to just do whatever the fuck he wants. Like, Vogel will bench his ass if he misses too many open threes, if he commits some turnovers. Like, he'll get yanked, but he still has enough leash where he can like learn, but he's still learning in a winning environment, so it's building really good habits. So this kid is developing pretty well right now. I still get frustrated at him at times. Like, I'm the biggest THT stan in the world, but I always got to remind myself, like, he's 20 years old. Like, chill out. He's 20 years old. I mean, this kid's potential is insane, and he's really been stepping up big in the last few games without Bron. And here's the thing, he plays better with Bron, not just because everyone plays better with Bron, but because when Bron's on the court, he loves to find THT and tell THT to go set the screen. So then Bron gets doubled, and then THT gets the kick out off the screen, off the pick and roll, and then all of a sudden THT can run 4-on-3. And that's what LeBron and THT were doing for like 3 straight games until LeBron got hurt. So be like watch out. It's not like when LeBron comes back, I don't expect THT to all of a sudden go to the end of the bench. Like, I feel like THT is going to still play a decent amount of minutes, and I think he might even score more when Bron's back. Okay, let's get to Kuzma. I think he's been pretty good overall. He's been hurt the last few games. So the last few games, he's been pretty frustrating, but he has that calf strain. Kuzma had some explosive games. Like, he dropped, I think, 24 or something against Charlotte tonight. I got to double check that, but he had a pretty big game against the Kings. Kuz, like, he's not going to be the most efficient guy, but he's not afraid to shoot. He's not afraid to get shots up. And right now, when you don't have Bron and AD, you need a guy who's not afraid to get shots up. I think he's been shooting the 3-ball really well for the most part. I don't expect him to be like a 40% guy. If Kuz can stay mid-30s, I'm happy with that. And defensively, he's still really good. And just overall, like, I think he's in his, fifth year at this point? Fourth year, fifth year? I can't remember, but he at this point now is a vet, and he honestly is a leader on this team. Like, it's crazy. As a young guy, like, I think Kyle Kuzma is a leader on this team. So that's all I can really say about him, is he's actually a leader on this team. Like, that's a huge compliment you could pay to Kyle Kuzma. Would you have pictured Kyle Kuzma being a leader on this team like a few years ago with the way he was playing? Hell no. He's playing winning basketball. Every few games he's liable to just go off for 20 plus, and this team needs that right now. So I think he's been pretty good. I mean, he was pretty ass the last 2 games, but he was hurt, so we got to give him the benefit of the doubt. He can still be prone to making some dumb decisions, but as a whole, he's been playing pretty well. Markieff Morris, man, he has been awesome. Like, I would say he's probably been the best player. It's tough. It's probably between him, Trez, and Dennis, but man, I might have to give it to Keith, because Keith has just risen from the fucking dead like the Undertaker, man. His post defense right now is awesome. Like, he missed tonight's game because he sprained his ankle against the Knicks, but his post defense is really good. So even though he's prone to getting beat off the dribble sometimes, in the post, man, it's really hard to score against Keith in the post. On top of that, he's shooting the ball lights out. Like, he started off the season, he couldn't hit the fucking broadside of a barn. Obviously, as a veteran, his legs were just like so tired. He needed to get his legs under him, and he had complained about that. He was pretty vocal about that. Now, he's been shooting it lights out. Once in a while, like, you can throw the ball into him in the post and he can get buckets in the post. He got buckets against KD in ISO situations. Like, this dude is playing great basketball, and he is a game changer for the Lakers, because if Keith is going, all of a sudden you can play him at the small ball 5 with AD, and you can get an ultimate spacing lineup, and shit gets pretty fucking scary. Because if you're running a lineup of like LeBron, AD, Keith, and then pick your, any of the 2 guards that got it going, Caruso, and then maybe KCP or Dennis, like whichever guards got it going, they're playing. That's a pretty devastating lineup. So Keith's been balling. Trez, he's been struggling the last few games, but Trez did put this team on his back for the first stretch. He was averaging like 20-something. He's still finishing at an insane rate. I just think right now, teams are collapsing so hard on the paint that there's just not a lot of room for Trez to operate. So I think as soon as Bron comes back, Trez's numbers are going to go up again. I also think that the last few games, he's looked a little bit tired, which is to be expected, man. This season is so fucked up, and the games are so condensed, especially in the second half of the schedule, that I'm not surprised that a guy like Trez is starting to look tired. Like, the entire team looked tired against Charlotte, so, I'm not surprised that Trez is tired. That's all I'm going to say. But I still think he's been pretty good. He was pretty bad against the Knicks, and he wasn't great against the Nets. But look, man, he's still a beast. Like, you still can't forget what he's been doing for the team this year. He's still been a great net positive on the team. I still think he's played really well, to be honest. Lastly, I just want to go through the 2 centers. Obviously, the Lakers added Andre Drummond, and that was a big point of contention, because I feel like there's this civil war going on in the Lakers fan base between Drummond and Gasol. Gasol got a DNP against, I think, tonight against the Charlotte Hornets, and then he didn't get a DNP against the Knicks, but he barely played. My thing with Gasol is that he's still going to have value in certain matchups in the playoffs. Like, if Jokic is killing you, then you put Gasol in. If Gobert is killing you, you put Gasol in. Like, Gasol's a really good post defender. He's still really smart. Gasol's IQ is on a different level. It's way smarter than Andre Drummond's. It's just that Gasol is damn near 36 right now, so it's like he can't move that well. So the Lakers got Drummond because Drummond plays big. He's 27. He plays big. Now, I'm not going to say that Drummond doesn't have his flaws. He has a lot of flaws, but give him a chance, man. Like, Gasol had a great game against the Raptors. That was a revenge game. I don't think he should be getting DMPs, and I don't think he will. But I think for this next stretch, Vogel's going to DMP Gasol for a bit while he gets Drummond integrated into the system. And then in the playoffs, don't be surprised if you see Gasol for 5-10 minute stretches at a time. But I don't think he's a guy who plays more than 10 minutes a game, even in the playoffs. I just think that he's too old at this point, and teams are just going to target him and just target him with movement. But I do think he's a guy who's going to get some minutes. I absolutely think that. But I still think the bulk of the minutes are going to go to Andre Drummond. And I know people are upset about that, blah, blah, blah. People seem to hate Andre Drummond. And I know he had a brutal last 2 games, but bro, he hasn't played in over a month and a half, right? Like, this is his first stretch of games that he's playing since the Cavs decided to sit him. He's going to be tired, man. He's going to be fucking tired. On top of that, everyone's just going to forget how well he played against the Heat, against the Nets. He played really well against the Heat. Bam really couldn't stop him. He was drawing a lot of fouls against Bam. And then against the Nets, I mean, they had no answer for him. He pretty much helped win us the game against the Nets, him and Dennis. So Drummond, he's been tough the last 2 games, but to me, he looks tired, right? A guy who hasn't played since, I think it was like early February or something when they sat him down. All of a sudden, he's coming back, and it's like back-to-back. It's like this condensed schedule. He's got to get his legs under him, so he looks a little bit tired. Plus, he fucking had a toenail ripped off, so he's not at full strength right now. But Vogel is too good of a defensive coach for me not to believe that Drummond's going to get a lot better as the season progresses and into the playoffs. And on top of that, right now when he's catching the ball, guys are just double teaming him because the scouting report is out. Like, he's not great at handling the ball. On top of that, the Lakers don't have a lot of threats, so it's like Drummond gets the ball, he's talented, he's big, double him immediately, hope he makes a mistake. That's basically what teams are playing him for. When LeBron James comes back, that changes completely. So Drummond is going to keep getting those minutes because they're going to work him into shape. They're going to teach him the system. He's not great at boxing out right now, so they're going to have to build that habit into him. And I know he hasn't built that habit into him throughout his career, but Vogel and this staff, they're different on defense. They are just different animals on defense. There's no doubt in my mind that Drummond's going to improve a lot defensively. He can switch. Like, he can move his feet on defense. He's done some things that are like, whoa, this guy is fucking big and talented. So I'm really happy about the Drummond acquisition. I think he changes this team. And I think, if you're judging him right now without Bron and AD, you're just being short-sighted and you're just being biased. You just hate Drummond. Wait till Bron and AD comes back. It's going to be different. I still think Drummond, once he gets a little bit of rest, he's going to play even better. I still think he adds a different dimension to this team. He's just so big. And tonight, against the Charlotte Hornets, he didn't look great. He wasn't squeezing a lot of rebounds, but I just think the whole team was tired, man. It was the last game of a road trip. Like, they were pretty tired. The entire team looked pretty sluggish. And, obviously a big guy, having not played for a while, like, it's going to hit him even more, especially he's got a toenail off. So I'm not going to put too much weight into these games right now for him. But he does need to box out. He does need to be a little bit more alert on the defensive glass. But I think he will be. I think the coaching staff's going to get on him for that. And I trust Vogel to make miracles with the staff on the defensive end. So that's pretty much it for my recap and how I've seen this road trip. Looking forward to these next 5 games. And, it's all about holding on at this point until the big dogs come back. And then just hopefully there's like 5 to 7 games for them to get, going again. But I think they're doing the right thing, keeping them rested. You saw what happened to Jamal Murray. You can't take any chances in this season. I think the Lakers already fucked up by not resting AD when he first had soreness, and they paid the price because now they had to rest him for 2 months now, right? But whatever it takes for AD to stay healthy, they got to do, and I think they're doing that right now. So good win. Going 6-7 is great. Without Bron, hopefully they can add a few more wins, steal a few more games. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoy the video. I will catch you later.
Man, they try to do me dirty. Heard it from a birdie.